In the quiet cradle of a sleeping world, a night arrived that felt heavier than all the nights before a night, when the sky seemed to hold its breath and humanity felt something stirring. Beyond the edges of the stars, something ancient watching, something approaching, with a purpose no one yet understood. It began with a whisper hidden inside the static of distant radio transmissions, a faint rhythmic pulse that did not belong to nature or chance. A signal shaped by intention, shaped by intelligence, shaped by something that wanted to be heard. Across the endless ocean of space, scientists stared at their screens with widening eyes, their hearts pushing against their ribs as the pattern became clear, a message reaching across light years, not from Earth, not from any known satellite, not from any lost probe, but from an unknown source, drifting in the depth of the cosmos like a calling from the dark. The world awakened to the news and fear rippled through nations like a shadow passing through water, but beneath that fear another feeling lived, a rising fire, a curiosity older than civilization itself, the same fire that pushed humanity across oceans and mountains, deserts, and voids, the fire that whispered, "What if?" Then the ship arrived. It descended from the heavens, silently, without thunder, without flame, without aggression, a structure vast and luminous, shaped like a fragment of a fallen star, its surface shifting like liquid metal, reflecting continents, oceans, lights, and clouds as it settled into the skies above Earth. Panic erupted, governments scrambled, militaries trembled, people prayed and argued and wept, but as the alien craft hovered unmoving above the world, a strange calm followed the storm, as if the planet itself sensed that something larger than fear was stepping into human history. A beam of pale silver light fell from the ship, touching the ground in a quiet city where cameras flashed and soldiers held their breath, and from that light stepped a being unlike any born on Earth, tall, slender, composed of shimmering textures that moved like woven starlight, eyes deep and silent like forgotten galaxies, voice resonating like the echo of a dream. "We are the Eluun," it said, with a tone that felt both soft and infinite, "and we have come to judge your world." No one spoke for a moment because the word judge carried the weight of extinction. The Eluun explained that they traveled the galaxy, observing civilizations, measuring their stability, their logic, their contribution to universal harmony, and deciding whether they were fit to exist in the cosmic order. Many species had failed before, consumed by their own chaos, erased by the Eluun in the name of preservation and balance. And now it was humanity's turn to stand before them, a species defined by conflict, contradiction, creativity, and resilience, a species which the Eluun believed could either illuminate the galaxy or drown it in turmoil. But humanity was not ready to be erased. A young astrophysicist named Clara Reyes stepped forward before any leader could speak, her voice trembling yet steady. She asked, "What do you need to see in order to decide our fate? What proof do you require to understand humanity?" The Eluun tilted their heads as if studying a fragile flame, and replied, "Show us what it means to be human. Show us why you fight, why you hope, why you break, why you heal. Show us why your existence matters in a universe that does not need you." And so humanity began its greatest test. The Eluun walked the Earth, passing through cities glowing with neon and nights filled with music, watching crowds move with purpose. They stood beside firefighters racing into burning buildings without hesitation. They observed doctors who fought exhaustion to pull strangers back from oblivion. They watched teachers who nurtured new minds with patience and love. They saw people helping one another during storms, sharing food, sharing shelter, sharing strength, without expecting anything in return. They traveled to mountains, where climbers risked their lives to reach summits. Simply to touch the sky they dove into, oceans to witness scientists, protecting fragile ecosystems. They wandered through deserts where communities stood strong. Against nature together they visited hospitals where people held hands through their final moments of life, proving that love mattered even at the edge of death. Yet the Eluun also saw human darkness. They saw anger, greed, conflict, destruction, voices raised in pain and wills sharpened into weapons. They saw how humans hurt each other and how easily they could shatter their own world. The Eluun questioned how such a species could survive its own nature, how chaos could coexist with compassion, how beauty could live beside brutality. Clara answered them with honesty, saying that humanity was not perfect, that humans failed and fought and broke and bled, but that each time they fell, they found a way to rise again, a way to rebuild, a way to forgive, a way to continue believing in a tomorrow that did not yet exist. But the Eluun required more. To test the human spirit, they created an illusion, a trial that wrapped the planet in a simulated disaster. The sky darkened, winds roared, thunder cracked, oceans surged, cities trembled with artificial quakes. Chaos swept the world like a living storm designed to crush morale, designed to reveal whether humans collapsed under despair or stood against the impossible. People screamed at first, but then something miraculous happened. Humanity began to rise, not one by one, but together. Strangers lifted each other from rubble, families opened their doors to neighbors searching for shelter, medical workers fought through debris to treat the wounded, volunteers formed lines to clear roads, children comforted the frightened, singers stood on rooftops to calm the night with their voices, soldiers protected civilians without asking who they were or where they came from. Unity spread across continents like a wildfire of light. People from opposing nations stood together, sharing resources, sharing safety, sharing the belief that no one would face the storm alone. And the Eluun watched in silent awe as the one thing they believed impossible unfolded before them. A species united not by logic but by heart. The storm faded, the illusion dissolved, the sky cleared, and the Eluun stood among humanity with a stillness that felt like the breath before dawn. Their leader stepped forward, eyes luminous with something unfamiliar, something almost like emotion, and spoke words that would echo for centuries. You are the most volatile species we have ever known. You are chaos, you are contradiction, yet within you lives a force stronger than destruction, stronger than fear, stronger than extinction. You possess the ability to choose compassion, even when darkness surrounds you, to choose hope, even when hope feels lost. You are worthy to walk among the stars. Humanity erupted in tears, in laughter, in unrestrained relief. Clara felt her knees weaken as the Eluun bowed before her and before the world, not in power, not in victory, but in respect. The ships rose into the sky, leaving behind shimmering trails like celestial brushstrokes across the heavens, and the message they left behind was simple: protect what makes you human, for it is your greatest strength. In the years that followed, humanity changed, not overnight, not perfectly, but deeply. Nations built bridges instead of walls, scientists collaborated across borders, artists inspired movements, leaders listened more. Ordinary people carried kindness like a quiet revolution. The world remembered that when it stood together it was unstoppable. Clara returned to her research, yet everywhere she went people whispered her name as the woman who spoke for Earth, but she always answered the same: it was not me, it was all of us. It was humanity choosing to be more than its fear, choosing to rise, choosing to prove that the heart of our species is stronger than our shadows. And somewhere in the endless night of space, the Eluun carried with them the memory of a small blue planet where fragile beings rose with the strength of supernovas inside their chests, where imperfection became power, where hope burned brighter than any star. And humanity stepped forward into its future, knowing that the universe was watching, not to judge but to witness. The story of a species that refused to fall, a species that refused to surrender, a species that would always rise. Smooth emotional flow, and humanity stepped forward into its future, knowing that the universe was watching, not to judge but to witness. The story of a species that refused to fall, a species that refused to surrender, a species that would always rise again. But the story did not end with the departure of the Eluun, for their judgment had planted a seed inside every human heart, a quiet question that echoed through cities and villages, through crowded stations and quiet bedrooms, through every place where life breathed. What will we become now that the stars know our name? Children grew up hearing the tale of the day the sky opened and humanity stood unbroken. Teachers told them that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to stand anyway, that unity was not a miracle, but a choice repeated again and again until it shaped the world into something brighter than before. Nations that had once glared across borders with suspicion found themselves building together, building bridges, building research stations, building new ways to share knowledge and dreams. People spoke not as enemies, but as travelers on the same fragile planet, drifting in a boundless sea of night. The memory of the storm, the great illusion, created by the Eluun, lived in everyone who had survived it. Even though the destruction had not been real, the emotions had been real, the terror had been real, the courage had been real. Humanity remembered how it felt to face the edge of the world together, how it felt to hold strangers close, how it felt to discover the strength that lived within each beating heart. Decades passed and the world began to change in ways that no one could have predicted. Energy grew, cleaner cities, greener borders, softer people, more open to the idea that all lives on Earth moved within the same fragile circle of existence, that every small kindness nudged humanity toward a better tomorrow. Clara herself grew older, her hair turning silver like the first light of dawn, but her spirit remained bright. She was invited to speak at universities and summits, yet she always said the same words. The day the Eluun came was not the day I saved humanity, it was the day humanity saved itself. At night she would sit on her rooftop staring at the sky, tracing the constellations she had memorized as a child, wondering whether the Eluun were out there, watching, wondering if they ever spoke of Earth with the same awe that Earth now spoke of them. And she hoped they did not see humanity as perfect, but as striving, growing, evolving, choosing light, even when shadow lingered close. Then one evening a soft tremor rippled through the sky, a faint shimmer, like the reflection of sunlight on water, and people across the world lifted their eyes, sensing something familiar, something that made their hearts thrum with recognition and memory. But no ships appeared, no beams of silver descended, only a message carried on a gentle cosmic wave, a message not spoken in words but in feeling. We remember you. Clara felt tears warm against her cheeks, because in that simple message lived the truth that the actions of humanity had reached beyond the world, beyond the solar system, beyond the silence of interstellar dark, and touched a civilization ancient and wise, a civilization that now carried a fragment of the human heart within its own. The message wrapped the earth in a quiet warmth, a reminder that even the smallest act of unity could travel farther than anyone. Imagine that hope was not a whisper but a force that echoed through galaxies, that humanity was no longer a lonely species staring at the cosmos in fear, but a voice heard across the endless night. Exploration missions began, new ships designed with collaboration from every continent soared into space, carrying scientists and dreamers, artists and historians, people who wanted to see what lay beyond the familiar blue horizon. They carried no weapons, only curiosity, only peace, only the desire to meet the stars as equals, not as fearful children. One of those ships, named Dawnfire, carried Clara as an honored guest, though she claimed she had done nothing to deserve such recognition. But when she stood inside the observation deck, watching Earth shrink into a glowing marble, she felt something she had never felt before, a sense that the universe was no longer vast and cold, but vast and welcoming. The Dawnfire traveled past the moon, past Mars, past the quiet rings of ancient worlds, venturing into territories where human eyes had never gazed. The crew recorded nebulae blooming like cosmic gardens, captured the slow dance of binary stars, listened to faint radio whispers from forgotten corners of the galaxy, and each moment felt like an echo of that first day when the Eluun had descended to test the fire of humanity. Years passed, and the children born during the era of first contact grew into adults who carried no memory of the old fear, who lived with the belief that unity was natural, that compassion was strength, that humanity was part of something larger than itself. These young souls spoke of a future where humans would walk among the stars, not as conquerors, not as wanderers, but as creators, builders, peacemakers, dreamers. Clara lived long enough to see the Dawnfire return to Earth, greeted by millions whose cheers shook the air. Like a rising sun, she smiled as she stepped onto the soil of her home planet, her heart steady, her steps slow but certain. She knew her life had been a single thread in a tapestry far greater than anything she could have imagined, a tapestry woven from the courage of 8 billion souls. And when she finally closed her eyes for the last time, she left behind not a legacy of fear but a legacy of hope. Her story a reminder that sometimes a single voice can awaken the strength of an entire world. The Eluun returned once more, generations later, not as judges not as distant watchers, but as allies they came carrying, knowledge carrying gratitude, carrying the memory of a small blue world that had taught them something there. Logic had never revealed that imperfection was not weakness, that emotion was not danger, that unpredictability could be beauty, and that humanity, a young, fragile, chaotic species, possessed a strength that no empire could replicate. Together, the Eluun and the humans forged a new era of understanding and alliance, not carved by power but by respect and shared wonder for the universe around them. And so the story of humanity did not end. With survival, it expanded into the stars, into friendships, forged across light years, into futures built with hands from different worlds, into dreams that stretched far beyond what any generation had believed possible. For this was always the truth hidden inside the human spirit, that humanity was more than flesh and bone, more than fear and conflict, more than mistakes and pain. Humanity was a rising flame, a relentless hope, a force that even the cold of the cosmos could not extinguish. And in the endless night where galaxies drift like ancient lanterns, the story of Earth traveled from world to world, whispered in awe, repeated in wonder, the story of a species that rose from dust to light, from despair to unity, from isolation to cosmic kinship, the story of a species that refused to fall.